Welcome everybody. My name's Scott Hebbard from Sparx Systems, and today we're once again looking at our urban parking system repository. Today we're going to be looking at intermediate activity diagrams and seeing how they work in Enterprise Architect. I'm joined today by Stephen Maguire. Welcome Stephen, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you Scott, and thanks for the introduction. Let's make a start. As you can see in the diagram, the navigation diagram that we've got open, we have a number of navigation cells. One of them is entitled behavioral models, and this is where we want to go to. Our activity models are a type of UML behavioral model, and what we're going to do is we're going to click through on this navigation cell, and then we come through another navigation diagram where we've got a number of different types of behavior diagrams. We're interested in this one at the top. I can click on this little circle icon in the bottom right corner of that navigation cell, and it brings up a picture of what the diagram looks like. I'm going to close that and actually launch the diagram. So let's do that. And you can see in an earlier video, we constructed a basic activity diagram with swim lanes, or partitions as they're called in UML. So if you haven't looked at this video, I encourage you to go back and look at that video either first or retrospectively. It'll give you the basics of how we construct this diagram. So on the diagram, we have a number of nodes. We have this start node and we have a final node here. So these represent the start point and the completion point of the activity diagram. And it's important for you to realize that this activity diagram is very much verb orientated. You see that the first words of the actions on this diagram here are initiate, enter, view, wait, accept, check, display. So they're very verb oriented. We don't have much information about the nouns, if you like, of what's going on, the data that's going on with this diagram. That's what we're going to look at today. But first, I just want to bring your attention to the fact that while this diagram is called an activity diagram, it's actually actions that are on the diagram. And you can see that from the toolbox that the second entry on that toolbox is an action. Let's find this diagram in the project browser. And that's simple. We just right mouse click on it and say find in browser. And that will open up the location. And you can see that what we have here is a number of partitions, and the elements are nested underneath each partition. So we've got here a meter controller, a payment system, and the motorist. So let's open up one of those and we'll look at the motorist, and we can move these up and down in the project browser. So let's do that, and we'll go to our motorist and we'll say, look, let's move that up in that list. But if we click on that and expand it, you can see that there are a number of actions in this partition or swim lane. And again, they're not in the same order. That's not critical as a diagram, but we can, if we want to, move them up here and make them in the same order. What we're going to do
before
today,
we start modeling, is it worth perhaps setting the perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. We're going to get to that. So as we start, before we start doing the actual diagramming, we set our perspective. So up in the top right-hand corner, we've got Archimate, which is what I've been working on earlier today. So it's part of the enterprise architecture perspective set. And you can see that there is Archimate there. We want to go into UML and behavioral modeling. So we'll just choose that one. It opens up a number of, or a builder page with a number of different diagram patterns in it. And you can see here there's one for activity diagram, and we've got a number of different patterns there with partitions, with decisions, forks, flows, and central buffer, which we're going to be looking at today. And in a later video, we'll be looking at these exception handlers and things as well. But we will look at the data store as well, and you can see that you can easily inject these models, these patterns, into your model or your repository simply by clicking on the create model, and that will inject it into a location in your browser. But I like to work from first principles, Scott, so we're going to close that, but I encourage people to get a jump start on some of these diagrams by using the very expansive and extensive range of patterns in the tool. So with this diagram open, we're going to now look at putting some data. So I talked about this as being a kind of a verb-oriented diagram, and it is because we are talking about like a process or the things that are happening. So one of the things that we'll look at is we'll move this legend down here a little bit out of our way for the moment, and we're going to put in this wait for payment. We're going to put in an object node, and if you look in the toolbox over here, we've got a number of groups of toolbox items. We've got activity and action partition. All of those things are actually on our diagram. We can see those. We've got an action and the partitions, and the activity is the overarching element. And down here, we've got a number of other things related to objects. So the nouns, if you like, these are almost the verbs up here, and these are like the nouns. So we've got an object there. Now I could just drag that on to the diagram, and I can simply do that, and I'll show you what happens. The object goes onto the diagram. It's there. We can use all of our alignment tricks to line it up. But I'm not going to do that, Scott. I'm going to do what a more intermediate modeler would do. I'm just going to remove that from the repository and the diagram. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the search feature, and I'm going to look for a debit card. And we'll look at that, and we'll see here that there is a debit card here. We've got a card reader, payment reader, all sorts of things to do with cards, card processing there. And you notice down in here, Scott, we've got the notes there. We can look at our debit card. It's a payment card that allows users to make purchases without and withdraw cash directly from their linked bank account. So what we want to do is find that in a diagram or in the project browser. Let's find it in a diagram first. And we can see here, we've now transported ourselves, the tools transported us to our class model, which is type of structure model. And it's talking about the nouns in the system. So we've got, you know, a parking meter, a motorist, parking session, profile, vehicle, all of those things. But down here on the payment side of things, we've got a debit card. So we can simply go control copy on that. Or if we wanted to, we can say, again, find in the project browser, and you know, there it is there. I'm going to now move back to my activity model, having found that information. So a general principle, Scott, very important, is a lot of novice modelers or people new to modeling will say, I need a debit card. I'll just create one, like I showed you a little bit earlier when I dragged that on there. But a much better thing to do is to reuse the elements that are already in the repository and try and articulate them together into creating a narrative or a story. I'm simply going to drag that onto the diagram and drop it there. I want it to be a link to that in this case, and I'll put it there. And you can see now it's prefixed by where it came from. It's come from the class model. I'll make it just a fraction smaller there, and again, line it up with that one. Now, I need to relate it to the elements that are in this diagram. And I want to relate it to this one called wait for payment, because that's what it's relating to. However, in our toolbox, you can see that typically with diagrams, and this is more of an intermediate thing, we've got elements, in the case of activities, objects, control nodes, but then we have some of these things here, which are relationships. So I'm going to close these control nodes for a minute and these objects. I can just simply do that by pressing on the little triangle. And I want to focus on these object flows and things. So I'm going to choose an object flow, and I can do it from the quick linker, or I can do it from here. And I'm going to do it from the quick linker and from the toolbox. I'll drag it on. And you notice that what Enterprise Architect has done it's put a little square on the side of that little box. And that's called an action pin. It's part of the syntax of these diagrams, and it shows where, if you like, data or information is coming into or leaving a particular action. Now we should name this. Here, and we're going to call it card input.
And what's the difference between a control flow and an object flow?
So the control flow is about the sequencing. So let me just put this one in, and we'll just answer that question. There we go. And so the difference between the sequence, the control flow, and the object flow is very important. The control flow is about the verbs. It's about the sequencing of them. So if you look at this diagram here, we have these ones here, and it's a control flow. It's going between the start and the initiate, and between enter registration thing and enter duration, control flows. This one's an object flow. It's about data coming in or leaving, or objects. It doesn't have to be data. It could be objects. It could be like an image that's coming from a photographic system. So the system may be taking a photo of your license plate or something, and that image could be transported across an object flow. But we have that there, the class model. Put the pin in there. We've got that. So that's telling us quite a bit about the fact that this credit card's going in. Now, if we go back and look at our objects again, you see that there are a number of other items in here. We've got a central buffer node and a data store, and we've got an action pin we've looked at. So let's have a look at our data store. We'll do that one first. I'm going to make a little bit more room on this diagram, Scott, by simply going Control A to select it all. So I just hit the Control and A key. I'm going to simply move it down. Very quick to do. Gives me a little bit more room. And I'm going to drop a data store on here called the vehicle registry. So one thing that's going on here is this enter registration number. It isn't just a simple text field. It's going to go off and check with the vehicle registry system. So let's put that on as a data store, and we'll give that a name. And as always, Scott, you remember from previous videos, if people have watched those, I am very particular about putting in notes for all the elements that I'm using. So down here in the notes window, I'm going to simply put in some notes. This data store maintains a comprehensive database of registered vehicles, primarily storing license plate numbers along with associated vehicle and owner information. So, this is what's going on. And now, again, let's put an object flow and see what happens here. And we'll put that in and got an object flow there. Now, in this case, it hasn't put a pin in there. I like to put pins on there as an indicator that the object's coming into that particular node. So just to demonstrate that as well, I've got an action pin here. I can drop that from the toolbox onto that diagram, and I'm going to give that action pin a name of registration number. That might be called different things in different jurisdictions. It's a license plate, a registration number. And now I've got that node on there. And I can simply use a very useful feature in Enterprise Architect of selecting that connector and moving my cursor over the connection point and then dragging away from that. And I'm going to drop it until it targets that pin. And I'm going to move my pin back into place now. So this model is not about you creating a SQL Server database or anything like that. It's at a higher level of abstraction. You haven't said what kind of storage that data store is. It could be actually anything in the end. It's actually outside our jurisdiction anyway, because outside our control, because we're not the vehicle registry people. So it's good just to put it in as a data store there. So that's a useful thing to do. Now, the other thing, we've got another item on there called a central buffer.
What is a central buffer?
Yeah, so it sounds very important, Scott, that's for sure. So a central buffer is something that stores information as it's coming in from multiple nodes, possibly, and it's not making a finite kind of disk representation of it. It hasn't been stored on a disk anywhere as an actual record, but it's buffering. It's like a cache. If you're a computer science type person, you'll understand the word cache. It's like a temporary storage. So again, let's put the central buffer on there, and let's put in some notes as that as well, and we'll just put that buffer on. So again, I can just drag it from the toolbox, and I'm going to put it here. And what am I going to call it? Pending transactions. pending transactions. And again, as I do always, I want to put some notes in there. So let's put that in. Upsy daisy, that's not the one I wanted. That's my data store one. Let me get the central buffer one. And let's put those notes in there. So the central buffer temporarily holds all parking transactions that are being initiated but wait for final confirmation, such as pending payments, incomplete registrations, or registrations awaiting user arrival. So if you remember, our parking system is quite it's quite diverse. It's got a number of different things that it does. People just turning up to a parking space in the city. It's got event parking. It's got people doing recurring bookings and all sorts of different things. So just realised I made a typo there on this CRED put that there. Okay, so now we've got our central buffer, and it's going to get things from a number of different places. So let's make a bit more room on our diagram. We can simply move this element down, and let's use the bend at cursor option here. So bend cursor, line at cursor, and we can do that just holding the control key down as well. Let's do that, and let's move this one down a little bit, and you know, we've got a little bit more room there. So now we want to relate our central buffer to both the view cost and the wait for payment. So let's do it the other way. Let's put in an action pin there first, and I'll just hide that label just for a minute, and let's put in another action pin on this one. Again, I can hide that label, and let's that, and let's move this one down there, and let's put some object nodes into the buffer. Object flow going this way. So the buffer's kind of getting input, and then it's you know, and I've got an object flow there. We'll make that a little bit smaller, give us a bit more room again, and we'll move that down there. Here's our, I'll increase that a little bit in size. So lots of flexibility there, Scott, with you know, moving things around, you know, making them a little bit bigger, smaller, whatever you need to do. And I can, you know, again, I could make this element just a little bit bigger to give myself a little bit of room there. And EA does this sort of magic of being able to, you know, line up these elements. So let's all line them up with this one here. Go to our layout ribbon, and let's line their centers. And you can see now that that's a decent looking diagram. Again, move this one under there, and you can see that it's going to line up with that one as well. Just tidy the line angle up there, and it's looking good, Scott. So this intermediate video was really focused on the data aspect. As I said, the initial diagram that we did as part of the behavioural diagram wasn't showing that detail of the data, but you can see here examples of you know, an object going in, a debit card. You can see examples of a data store, and a data store is actually a type of central buffer that actually just makes the records permanent, if you like, or serializes them if you're computer science type of person. And the central buffer, though, is just, you know, holding these things in a kind of temporary store or a cache, waiting for the you know, waiting for a collection of them, and then it's, you know, writing them out, or whenever the, you know, this wait payment needs that payment, it's going to have that record in there. So Scott, that's we can move our legend back up again, but that's an intermediate introduction to the activity diagram, and you can see that we've added a little bit more detail. I want to just mention one other thing. We did mention this in the introductory one, but I want to just mention it again. These partitions here, these swim lanes, they can get in your way a little bit when you're working. So what I encourage you to do is to multi-select them. I can do that by just lassoing the three of them there. I haven't got any other elements selected. Right mouse click and go into behavior and say make non-selectable. Now that they then are not selectable. Of course, if you want to, you know, make them selectable again, you can easily do that and say select them, or you can, you know, select a lot of them and go in to this design ribbon here and go into the options and say make all elements selectable. So
Yeah.
that will do that. So that's it for this video, Scott. I encourage people to think about the data that's going on in their system, and again, not to just start creating objects that aren't related to anything in your model. But remember, we got this one from our class model, and you can see it's there. And I can always go back and say, find that in all diagrams, and find out where it is. And we're going to be back here. It's in the card input one. We're in the class model one there, and we're back. We're back to that diagram. So encourage people to experiment with their own models and try and make these diagrams a little bit richer.
Thanks, Stephen. It's been good to see, how data stores work, how central buffers work, being able to reuse existing class models and objects in your diagram, and showing how it all comes together, and learned a little bit about action pins and control flows, and so it's been really valuable. To all our customers out here, we encourage you to go back and have a look at the introductory one if you want to catch up on how to create activity diagrams. If you have any questions about activity diagrams, or you'd like some help or training around activity diagrams, you can reach out to Stephen using his LinkedIn credentials and the credentials that we'll save in the description of this video. And I'm sure Stephen would be happy to help your organisation if you need some more advanced training around activity diagrams and UML in general. Thanks, Stephen, for your time. Greatly appreciated, and look forward to the next one.
Always a pleasure, Scott.